Thank you, Keith, for the introduction there. And Keith said that that they were able to accomplish a lot in Lexington, though, but it was just because of the good partnership, though, that we had working with the city of Lexington. And I'm going to give just Keith all the credit in the world for that, though. I tell you, there's just nobody like Keith Lovan. As you all know, well, the people that know him, his passion, his commitment, his dedication, hard work. I mean, I can use all kinds of different adjectives, along the way to describe what Keith does, though. But he also just made it a pleasure to work with somebody of his character and the quality that he is, though. And, he just had an attitude, let's just go get things done. It doesn't have to be perfect whenever you embark upon trying to do a project, and I'm getting off my script here, which I always do. But whenever you embark on something like this, something that's hard, if you're talking about Legacy Trail, something like that to try to build in Lexington before the World Equestrian Games was going to be coming to Lexington, though, that was almost basically an impossible task. Almost basically, we just said, look, we got federal money, we've got this deadlines, we got all these requirements and reporting, and we're dealing with the University of Kentucky, we're dealing with every kind of regulation known out there, and just a million obstacles in the way. It just almost seemed daunting. But we formed a partnership working with Lexington, working with Keith, and Keith saw a way that we could get it done. He had vision, he had that passion to get it done, and lo and behold, we got it, didn't we, Keith?
And deadline.
We met the deadline. We did. But I'll give Keith all the credit in the world for that, because we at Transportation Cabinet could not do that. There is no way in the world. The money was flowing, through the Federal Highway Administration, down through KYTC, down to the city, and that's just and I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about those partnerships and how we have to work together to get things accomplished out there. I see Mayor Les Stapleton over here talking about Prestonsburg. So it's partnerships, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
It matters how you get things done. We'll talk about that in a minute. Troy knows about those too. We'll talk about that. But anyway, I'm supposed to get on the script and talk a little bit about today the IIJA. And I had to practice to say IIJA. It's hard to say the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, though. It's pretty tough to understand the federal legislation that's out there. And there's Mayor coming in. Hey, Mayor.
Hi, guys.
How you doing?
Doing good, hi, James.
Good to see you. And as y'all can tell, I'm pretty informal. And I'll be happy to take questions at the end, do things like that. So we'll do that. Can you all hear me okay in the back? Okay? I just want to make sure that I'm loud enough up here. The IIJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, newly proposed federal surface transportation bill is part of the Build Back Better plan, $1.75 trillion. That's you can probably imagine what kind of money we're talking about here. But it includes a component, for the federal surface transportation, though. It includes, roads, bridges, safety, the MPO activities, rail crossings, congestion mitigation, and then other programs. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, though. It's got a lot of that in there. So there's potentially a lot of money that's at stake here through the federal infrastructure bill. And I got something on the way into work this morning, though, that said we're hoping we're going to be getting closer through the different chambers in Congress. So we're not hardly there yet. We're getting closer and closer every day through some negotiations, though. But we did have to they passed an extension, though, of the current federal transportation bill, the FAST Act, though. They extended it to December the 3rd. Just got that news on the way in this morning, but it's kind of lining up a little better, I think, for potential passage of it. And I'm going to talk in a minute what that could mean for folks like the Kentucky Bicycle Bikeway Commission, though. This short-term extension, like I said, is kind of important, I think, to give members of Congress more time as they're trying to kind of reconcile some of the issues that they're having, though, with the larger bill. You got the human infrastructure side. What I'm interested in, of course, is the physical infrastructure. The investment in the roads and bridges and the carbon reduction and things like that. So that's we're watching that closely, and we're cautiously optimistic, though, that we're going to get something passed by the end of the year, where we hope we can. Well, what does that mean for Kentucky? I guess that's the kind of the important thing. The Transportation Cabinet in Kentucky, as a part of the the federal infrastructure bill, there's a part that's a portion, and then the piece of it, and that's kind of by formula. How much money do we get from the Federal Highway Administration that comes to Kentucky that supports all the highway investment, all the things like TAP grants that you guys are familiar with and all that. But then there's also this other piece I'm going to talk about, which is a discretionary grant program that's on top of the apportionment piece. And I think that's an important distinction in these conversations that I like to always let folks know about. There's a lot of misinformation about the federal infrastructure bill. Well, with this apportionment piece, it's kind of that part that's formula. You know, we send our 18 cents gas tax, to Washington, and then we get a portion of that back. Kentucky's, over the 5 years of the proposed bill, though, is we're looking at about $4.6 billion worth of investment coming back to Kentucky, which translates into about $915 million annually. And as a reference point, though, we so far in the past 5 or 6 years, though, we get about $780 million per year of that apportionment. So that's about $136 million additional that's potentially going to be coming to Kentucky, though, through this federal infrastructure bill. So it's kind of important to understand that. $136 million is a pretty good chunk of money. That means a lot. That's enough money that we can start to plan for bigger investment and bigger projects and things out there. With that additional investment, $136 million though, is per year, is we have to also match that with a 20% state match. And that's one thing that folks forget about, though. And one thing that with that 20% match, though, it just adds up. We're talking about several $1 million additional state money that we're going to have to come up with, though, which hurts our ability to do the programs. So I don't want to be out here, entirely advocating for a state gas tax increase, but we're struggling to maintain our highways. We're struggling to do those things up, and we also need that funding to match this federal increase. That's one reason that as the legislature goes into session this year, is there some folks out here that are advocating for a state gas tax increase. That's to help us leverage that federal dollars so we can match the federal funds. So that's kind of an important thing to talk about. I talked about that's the apportionment piece. That's what we're going to get by formula if it passes. There's also interesting this discretionary grant piece that we're going to have to compete for. Every all 50 states out there will be competing for this additional money. And there's some grant programs proposed in the bill. There's one focused on carbon reduction that states can apply for, which I think would be very important. Another one's called the Protect program, and it's aimed at improving the resiliency of our transportation network in the country, though. And so combined, there's about $48 million that's at stake, though, that states can compete for those two programs in the carbon reduction and the Protect program. And we think there could be some opportunity, if you think about carbon reduction, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. There's some opportunities there with things like bike lanes and trails and other modes of transportation, though, could be very, very important to the carbon reduction program. So there could be some opportunity to apply for some of that discretionary grant monies. One thing that I think has the greatest potential, though, for the cycling and pedestrian community, and I always, when I'm doing a presentation like this, and Keith knows me well, I like to focus on the cycling, but also focus pretty heavily on pedestrians, and that's because we just have so many of our pedestrians that are getting injured and even killed out here on our highways. So I think they go hand in glove as we talk about those kind of investments. But the Infrastructure Investment Job Act, it proposes investments of about $11 billion annually in transportation safety programs. And there's about $5 billion of that will be called a Safe Streets for All discretionary grant program. And it'll help states and localities reduce crashes and fatalities. And that's especially for cyclists and pedestrians. So that's about $5 billion discretionary grant for Safe Streets for All. So if you're kind of following the bill, though, kind of be looking for that part of it. And as far as I know, even the local communities, they can even apply for some of that discretionary grant funding, not just the state agencies out there. So that's something I think is going to be very important to follow, Keith, I think, and to help educate everyone about how you can go about it. Like, hey, how you doing? Did you ride this morning, Phil?
Yes, sir.
All right. I knew Phil would be out there riding. Somebody asked me, will they cancel the ride this morning or not? And I said, no, they won't cancel the ride. Folks like Phil will be out there, right? Did y'all ride or walk?
I'm joking, I did not ride.
Oh, you did
Put the guy on the spot. This guy shows up late.
I know. It's like I'm like a comedian heckler. Get the heckler back here and get you going. Anyway, Phil and I go back a long way too. Projects around the Lexington area, back to Legacy Trail. There's many projects downtown. So got a lot of relationships with folks out here. That's what it's about. That's kind of the IIJA update. So just be looking for those, especially the above the line discretionary grant program. So that's one thing that's very important to watch for as this thing passes on. And it's encourage your members of Congress though to get out here and pass this thing, guys. It's time. I know there's a lot of things, and I know that you mentioned though this stuff a lot is not partisan whatsoever at all. We just need the investment in our communities. So we need to do that. It's time to get something passed. Just agree to something. That's kind of the on the federal level. Some of the updates we have for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, the updates here, policies and projects that we have. I would like to mention the Kentucky's KYTC's 2020 through 2024 Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And one component of that plan that identifies vulnerable road users, bicyclists and pedestrians, though, as an emphasis area, though. And we have an emphasis area task force that's working to draft an action plan for these vulnerable road users, though. And Keith Lovan is the co-chair of that vulnerable road users task force. And we're going to be looking for opportunities to help cyclists and pedestrians, though, to improve safety out here on those roadways, though. So, Keith is going to be very, very, very involved in that effort. And we got slowed down a little bit with COVID going on. We had some things, but we're back up to full gear now, and we're working hard on that strategic highway safety plan. Every day I track and look at the numbers of the folks and the crashes and the number of fatalities that we have on Kentucky's highways, and those numbers are broken down into pedestrians, bicyclists, and other users out there. We look at them I make myself look at it every day because I think that's the most important thing I can do. Start my day looking at that. And the vulnerable road users though there's been a lot of crashes and the numbers are too high. It's a nationwide thing. I think it's impacted by distracted driving, of course, and frankly, it's also impacted by there's more folks using. They're out here walking and biking. I looked at some statistics yesterday though. And we've had a 25% or so increase in the number of folks that are walking and biking on our highways over the last few decades. And so I think that's really important too, though. That not only do we have more people out there, but we got more people distracted. So we need to work together on those education and engineering and enforcement issues that we have to try to improve safety. So anyway, strategic highway safety plan is ongoing. Something of interest too, though, I'd like to kind of talk about it, and I knew about it, but I wasn't until I started preparing for these remarks. I wasn't, entirely up on. So I'm glad that these are opportunities, I think, to get involved and see what's going on. We're partnering with the Kentucky Transportation Center at the University of Kentucky on a research project now entitled "Recommendations on How to Capture and Prioritize Bicycle and Pedestrian Needs in Kentucky." Now that's a long title for a research project, though, but that's something that I think is kind of in the background a little bit, but it's got the potential to have a huge impact on transportation and for other modes of transportation in Kentucky. And I'm going to say that again: recommendations on how to capture and prioritize bicycle and pedestrian needs in Kentucky. And that's a big investment that we're making, though, in those modes. And what it's going to do is going to recommend some data-driven measures, though, for considering non-motorized use in our what's called our shift process. And our shift process, if you've, I know the mayor and other people are familiar with this, it's the strategic highway investment formula for tomorrow. And it's how we prioritize our projects that go into the highway. We've been in that process just recently, though, is as we develop a new recommended highway plan that will be presented to the legislature coming in January, is we're using a data-driven approach, though, to identify the best projects that we can and prioritize those. So we're doing that. We work with our NPOs, the ads, we work with local communities, elected officials to identify those projects. What I'm excited about, though, is that this is going to consider other users, though, not just the motor vehicles, though, for projects and inclusion in this process. And it's also going to try to identify better funding sources for that as well. So I'm really, really excited about this research project. Though. I think it's going to be something that's could pay big dividends, though, and it's something that I know Secretary Gray is extremely interested in. So it's something that it's kind of ongoing. It's going to be over the next couple of years. And just this morning, sent an email as I was learning more about it, though, and I said, guys, we need to accelerate this. We got to get this thing going here. We can't. I didn't. I guess you introduced me, but I didn't tell a lot about my background. I actually worked at the Transportation Center for about 9 months at the UK. I retired from the Transportation Cabinet. I worked there doing some research and training and different things, and then went back to the Cabinet about a year ago. Secretary Gray asked me to consider coming back, and it's hard to turn him down, so I came back, and I've been serving in this role. Well, this research project, though, has big potential. And so I'm going to try to rush them up. I feel like I've been there and know those people. I'm going to rush them up. This is too important not to get this thing going. Which leads me to another important thing is this research project is going to update the pedestrian and bicycle travel policy. And that's something that's kind of our policy that guides our investment decisions and how we do projects and things when it comes to bike and peds at the Transportation Cabinet. And it was last updated, well, I think it was even just initially adopted in July of 2002. Wow. Been a long time. Do you remember who was the Transportation Secretary when it was adopted in 2002, Phil? I'll put you on the spot again. I don't. You don't? I'm going to give you a hard time today.
You won't be late next time.
You won't be here all the time.
Seats back there.
Huh?
Open seats back there.
Yeah. Jim Codell. Jim Codell. You know Jim Codell, right? Yeah, so Jim Codell. He was secretary, and he's the one that kind of got a lot of these kind of things going and started, when it comes to bike and peds and an emphasis on those things. So I think it's time to update it 20 years later. Don't y'all think it's time to update the policy? And it's a good policy, and Keith's going to be working on that as well. So we're going to work through that. We're going to try to accelerate it a little bit and get that going. Some of the things, Secretary Gray mentioned him. He's very interested in these things. Another thing we like to do, and I always mention at these kind of meetings, and I was thinking back in time with Keith this morning. I think I spoke to the Bicycle and Bikeway Commission meeting. You said it was 2000 and...
About 11 years ago. Bill Court was there. I was in the courtyard.
You were there, Bill. I remember you being there. It was at the Courtyard Marriott.
Me and Fred Flintstone.
Been there a long time, haven't we? And I was by the District 7 office, though. We had a meeting over there. I remember the room was extremely cramped. There were people standing in the back, and I can't remember all the issues of but we were working on Lexington Trail at that time, and we had several things going on, road diets and other things around in the central Kentucky area. And I don't remember what I talked about. I remember Bill being there, but it was a good meeting, and we had some good dialogue going on that day. So anyway, back to that, and I always mention this at these meetings, though, how important it is to work with the local communities, and how important it is for the local communities to work with the Transportation Cabinet in planning these infrastructure investments, though, that we want to make. And I always talk about that. I always say that Danville is a good example. Danville is one. When we were working on, there's a trail along the Kentucky 2320 Connector Road in Danville from 33 to 34. It's a heavily used trail now that's being built, and I think from talking to some of them, they're going to extend it on over for another leg on it. It's a great trail. They had asked us to consider that with the project when we were building the new highway. And one of our first questions was, well, do you have a plan? Is this trail, if we're going to invest a lot more money in this project, though, do you have a plan? Do you have a connectivity plan? What's the local investment in this? And they kind of looked around and they said, yeah, we kind of got a plan, but it really doesn't include this. So I said, before we can consider it, guys, we need to understand, though, that our investment's going to make sense and have value long term. So they went back, and Jennifer Kirchner was there. Have you guys heard Jennifer Kirchner? I guess she's now was at the city of Danville doing this kind of biped stuff. And Jennifer is now executive director of the Kentuckians for Better Transportation, and that's a name. She's a real advocate for biking and pedestrians. So Jennifer's a real dynamo. She is really something else, and I think she would be a great person for you guys to connect with a little bit too. So Jennifer,
she was going to come here today. She registered, but she sent me a text and said she can't make it. But we'll be in touch with her.
Oh, she bird dogged me. Oh my goodness! So she's and sometimes in this role is kind of tough. You think about it. You might have to spend another $1 million on a project somewhere, though, and how do you justify that? So Jennifer, she went to work. And she said, "Look," she said, "No, we'll have a plan to you," and they did. And so then we did the trail. So now it's you kind of see what happened. We built the trail with the project, and now they're getting ready to extend it further. So that local coordination, that planning effort, is invaluable to what we do in transportation does. You've got to have a plan. You really, really, really need to have an understanding of what the locals have for their vision, though. And I think that's something that's so important. It allows us to make that public investment in those projects out there. Other projects, though, right up the street here, US 25 in Berea. Did anybody? We call it the strip in Berea there. And there's bike lanes up there. That was part. Berea is they're just the example of what you should use when it talks about trying to make those investments in the infrastructure for trails, bike lanes, whatever it is. Because we know if we've got a highway improvement project somewhere around Berea, we can look at their plan and we can know it's updated. We can know that we should include bike lanes because it's going to make that connectivity, or it's going to make the next leg, connect the next leg of what their vision is for the city of Berea. So it makes those investment decisions much easier. So they've done a good job here. Things like Bowling Green, city of Bowling Green has done an outstanding job of developing plans, and we've been working with the city on multiple projects there to do road dikes as well. You take an old 4-lane side-by-side roadway and you reallocate the space to put in 3 lanes, 1 lane each direction with a turn lane, and usually you've got some space left over. Put bike lanes in, like we did on Euclid Avenue in Lexington, or a lot of projects around the city of Lexington. We did a lot of those, and they were just outstanding projects. And I was talking to Joe Plonker, district engineer out there, because we had one project there that we didn't really put in the bike lanes. It was in the Edmonton and Metcalfe County. We did a road dive. We went from old 4-lane side-by-side, which they're not very efficient. They have a lot of crashes on them, and you do a 3-lane. And one of the benefits of it, even if you don't have actually physical space for the bike lane on the outside, it just gives you some real estate. That's what it does. Maybe it's not you don't have 5 feet for a bike lane, but what if you had 2 feet? Instead of driving beside a car that's about to run you over, you get a couple of feet though out there. And I know from conversations I picked on Phil, but also from him, he says, I just need a little space when I ride my bike. I just need a little real estate. I need a little room out here so that I can be away from those cars. So we're looking for those opportunities though. So if you work with your local communities out there though, tell them, let's look for those opportunities. Let's have a plan in place. Let's try to do things like, road dives, adding bike lanes. Let's looking for those trails. Let's looking for those things. The David Rail Trail, up in Prestonsburg, isn't that one of the best examples that we have in Kentucky right now? And I think, are y'all doing a presentation, Mayor?
Josh is talking about trails.
Yeah.
Mountain bike trails.
Mountain bike trails.
We'll go ahead and volunteer that as a yes.
I guess I am yes.
Yeah, good deal. Talk to the mayor about that. They have a vision in Prestonsburg for improving tourism, improving the economy, improving quality of life, improving the health of the communities. In Prestonsburg, they took a rail trail. When I was in the private sector, though, for several years, we got the opportunity to work on that project, though, and help to deliver it. And it is just second to none, though. It's high quality. I saw on one of the websites, though, I guess you took an old school bus and you put it over one of the bridges, though, and you made it interesting features along the trail. And I was talking to the mayor this morning. They're getting people from all over the eastern United States that are driving to Prestonsburg, that are riding the trail, that are going to the restaurants, staying in the hotels. Though it's making a difference, guys. So that is so critically important. So I had the good opportunity to work with the mayor on that project of it. And you know, you get some of this federal money, this TAP grants and things like that. So it's important to have your plans in place. So I think we're doing that. So that's my emphasis area there. Another initiative we have going on at the Transportation Cabinet at the moment is we're updating the long-range strategic highway plan. Long-range strategic highway plan. It's update time for it, and we just announced the public involvement component of this long-range plan. What it does, it looks out many years out. I think it's to 2040. Is that what we're looking through? I guess you remember. I think it is. Isn't it? Quentin used to work in our District 11, worked in planning for a long time. He's since retired and going on to other things. But it sets the framework and the vision, though, for how we're going to make our investments in the surface transportation network, though, going forward. And right now, through this public involvement component, though, folks like the Kentucky Bicycle Bikeway Commission can encourage your membership to go to the website, fill out the survey, and talk about those things that are important to you guys to help guide our decisions going forward in the surface transportation world. So that's kind of a really important piece. So you know, there's many opportunities, I guess, that I've kind of talked about here that they can. I'll better give you the website. It's gettherekentucky.org. Just get there, GETTHERE together, KY.org. Gettherekentucky.org. Help us with that survey. It's extremely important, though. Keith, I'm sure you guys can get that out to your members.
I'll send that out to all the people that registered.
Yeah, okay. That's an important opportunity. So we've talked about some of those kind of those bigger, broader kind of strategic things that we're doing. You know, things like the strategic highway safety plan for vulnerable road users. We've talked about the research project that we're working on that will guide our future investments. We've talked about partnering with local communities. We've talked about strategic highway plan. And then, of course, there's the specific things that we're doing, though. An example would be this U.S. Bike Route 21, the Daniel Boone Bike Route. Though that's pretty cool, I think. And on Monday, as you probably have announced, there's going to be a public announcement. Secretary Gray's coming down. I'll try to get here if I can for that. They'll put me close to home. And so it's going to announce that. And the Transportation Cabinet invested $85,000 in funding to the Madison County Fiscal Court for signage for that trail. And I think those things are important. That's a good chunk of money that we invested in that. And we're happy to do those things as long as there's a lot of effort in planning. And we were talking about I first met Dr. Fox, I don't know, a long time ago. Well, many years ago, and he was talking about, you know, the trace and the trail and where it comes through. And the thing we were working on was down here at Boone Gap, which is just a few miles down the highway here on 25. And it was part of the old highway US 25. And there was at some point in time, the highway would be cut off where there was a pull off, and I didn't know it existed, though, that was there. There was no plaque that apparently was there at one time, and Dr. Fox was trying to get us to clean that area up, working with the Transportation Cabinet, working with the fiscal courts in each county, and trying to make that piece of the trail an important stopping component there, kind of a historic place, though, as you go through the trail. So I think that was something that was important to us, and I mean, it was complicated. Again, you know, all these things are complicated, as I talked about earlier. You know, you had a railroad tunnel there, you had the whole highway right of way, you had jurisdictional issues. Who was going to deal with it? Who was going to clean it up? How are we going to do it? But he was persistent, though, and I think that's a theme too. Though you got to be passionate, you got to be persistent when it comes to these things. So we were able to get the pull off, though, cleaned back up, working with the fiscal courts, and make it a component. I think it's a piece of this trail here. So that's an important component of it. So that's just something that's kind of, I know it's a small example of how we work together, but I think it's an important piece of it. You know, you got to have a vision, but you also got to have the follow through and the actions. And that's where people like Mayor Staple working on David Rail, he had this great vision for what things could be and look like. But also, though, it takes a follow through, and that's where, like, you know, Phil Hallback, though, you know, he made sure if we had projects around the Lexington area, though, if it included something, though, you know, whenever I was district engineer, though, he would come over to my office and we'd move and talk about the specific components and pieces to get them done. You know, it's great to talk about it. It's great to have vision, but also you got to have to follow through. That's hard. But if we work together, build relationships, get to know each other, that's how we can get it done. That's what's so very, very important. Well, that's really all that I have for my remarks today. I hope it didn't go on too long. I get pretty passionate about it. I get passionate about bike and peds. You know, I was thinking this morning, you know, our vehicular and those kind of big projects, though, you know, they're going to take care of themselves. They are. When you talk about other modes, bikes and peds and other things out here, you know, we got to fight for them and advocate for them and do those things. Though, you know, that's just so very important. And plan for it, and so I think that's why I'm passionate about it. You know, I grew up in just up the road here at Big Hill, and I kind of call Berea my home, you know, a little bit. I didn't grow up in Berea, but I grew up and lived here, and I watched what Berea has done in this time. They've done a fantastic job of. You don't need that. They've done a fantastic job though of building out their infrastructure though to make these things possible. But I'm passionate about it, and I'm passionate about trying to work through these issues. It's not going to be perfect, you know. It's hard, and it's really, really hard when you talk about policy and funding and the challenges that we have to do. But just like, you know, the folks in this room, though, you just got to work through those and push through. And we can, you know, together we can get things accomplished. So, you know, for the other road users, for the bikes and peds out there. So that's everything I had. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you for the opportunity, Keith.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Thanks for the presentation. That was very good. And I'll tell you, it's great to know that there's somebody in your position, the Secretary's position, that understand the cycling community and the need for, you know, it's coming, it's here now. And we need to deal with it as opposed to straight engineering, looking at the physics of cars versus bikes. Now, so it's very refreshing there. And best wishes for the next couple of years. In regards to the research study, will there be a public participation part of that?
There will be some participation with some advisory groups, though, that will be out there. I'm going to need to pull back a couple of the layers on it and try to understand it better. I don't know if there's going to be a component that will open it up to the broad public or not, Mr. Gordon, but I can certainly check on that and see if that's an option that we can look at. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure. I just kind of started digging into it just some yesterday, so I appreciate that. Yes, Dave.
Real quick follow-up on that. Does the Transportation Center know who's going to head that up at this point? That's still a little too early.
Going to head it up at Transportation Center?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Silverrat's heading that up. With Nick Stamatiadis, though, Dr. Nick Stamatiadis is heading that up, yes. And we're working on that. That's a real opportunity, I think. And Nick is a huge proponent of biking and peds out there. Keith knows him. He's a professor at civil engineering at UK, and he gets it. He gets these things that we need to do. And again, though, guys, it's you know, we got a long way to go. We got a 100-year history, though, of in this country, though, of the of vehicles and motorized vehicles, though, kind of being first out there, and you just can't turn it around on a dime overnight. It just takes time, but we're chipping away at it, though. We're making improvements, and it's building momentum. I'll have to say, though, and just help us with it, I guess, is what I'm saying. Just at every opportunity, help us along the way. Anything else? Yes, sir.
So I'm Peter Hackford. I'm a professor here at the college.
Yes, sir.
And I'm interested in following up on the group specifically at UK, because there are a number of scholars represented by people in this room, not only from engineering, but from health and human performance, or from recreation, and from, and in my case, from entrepreneurship. Really understand the value of data-driven research. So I'm gonna be interested in following up with you to find out who the people are at UK.
Right.
So that we connect them to the other scholars at Transylvania, at Eastern Kentucky University, maybe here at Berea, maybe even Moorhead and Western.
Sure.
So that we can bring our orientation to the support policy project.
Thank you. I think I saw your presentation at the British City Council one time, so I think that's really good. So that's, and I know you've done some research in that area about the health benefits of trails and things. So.
That's my colleague in Health and Human Performance, okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you. Yeah, very, very good. And I think that's the part that we can't just miss, either, though. It's about quality of life, it's about health, it's about many things, safety, it's about all of it, though. It's going to ultimately make a difference in our communities. And I think that's what the bottom line is. So any other questions that we have? All right, I'll turn it over.
Okay, with this new infrastructure bill and the amount of money that's coming in, which is more than what we're used to seeing, and new programs that are being created, is the transportation cabinet ready with a rollout type plan, or we'll get ahead so that we'll be prepared?
Well, and the question kind of was, are we thinking ahead? Are we thinking about the rollout of that? And absolutely we are. We're planning for that. We're actually had a meeting the other day, and we decided we're just going to go ahead and plan on the passage of the bill as we look at our projects and our investments out here. So we're just assuming that it is going to pass, kind of at these levels that are here, Keith. And we're working to get folks identified that'll help us with the grant programs. Though we'll probably have to hire a consultant, along the way to help us with those discretionary grants. We're kind of getting everything teed up for that. So, but be looking for those opportunities as they arise. So.
When would it take effect if they passed it before the end of the year?
When would it take effect if they pass it by the end of the year? It would. That's a good question. I don't know, because we're operating on a long, just a short-term extension right now to December the 3rd, though. Keith, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. When it would actually take effect, I don't know. I need that's it. I'll check it anyway. Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Just quickly, I brought this up yesterday with Keith, but I wanted to bring it up with you too. I was Paul and I's supervisor in the late 90s and or in early 2000s, and Paul drafted a letter from Secretary Goodell signed it, but he was lame duck in time, just like 6 months before Patton left office. And we never heard a response back, but it was to Eastern Kentucky University about the fact that when they do the traffic school, like it's 3.5 hours long or whatever, never a mention of how bikes and pedestrian, what rights they have on the road, nothing. The only thing they talked about was, they brought up if you're on a bike and you're intoxicated, you can get a DUI. The only thing they mentioned nothing about, what their rights on the road are or anything like that. And we wrote a letter to EKU, the guy who heads that program over there, and got nothing back.
We'll be happy to, if you want to try to someone resurrect that, Keith, we'll be happy to take a look at it and see what we can do and with the program and see. I'm glad you brought up Paul and I. She was a good friend of mine, and we actually co-presented at a partner conference one time. And really thought a lot of Paul. She did an outstanding job. So we'll be happy to take a look at that, Keith, if that's something we can do. I think we might. I don't know. I don't want to tell people I can't promise anything, but I'm very positive we could get something done. So, thank you. All right, thank you.
James.
As always, we hope you found this content useful. If you did, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks.